everyone. Welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. And finally, the NFL draft is here. It's going to be happening on Thursday, so hopefully you're listening to this. Hell, listen to it while the draft is going on. Tell your friends. Go to southboundsports.com. Check it out. The big move at the top of the board, Matt. Normally by now, at least in the past couple of years, we've had that number one pick locked in. Not so much this year. So let's go right off the bat. Who do you think is going to be drafted number one?
Oh, I have no idea.
So the ESPN has a draft challenge while I bring this up, where you pick who do you think you're going to be. They have you pick between two players. It'll be like, hey, is Hutchinson from Michigan going to be the number one pick? Or you can take the field. And then the quarterbacks between Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis. So we're going to go through and talk about that. That's why I brought up the number one pick first. So do you think it will be Hutchinson? And if not, who do you think has that push?
Well, I lean towards Hutchinson, but you know, I could even see going after like a Sauce Gardner or someone like that, like a defensive back, number one overall, because of enough time has passed that like maybe you go secondary right off the bat and try to solidify the back end. Like I think they did a pretty good job of boosting the offensive firepower. I definitely think it would be defense first, just a matter of what they go after.
So the latest rumor is, and I know ESPN still has Hutchinson like 67% as the favorite to go number one. But I will say that right now, the betting favorite has been Trayvon Walker from Georgia, which has kind of come out of nowhere, to be honest. I think the other person that people would have been talking about on the defense, if you go defense, would have been Thibodeau, right?
Well, that seems to be the three-man race, and that tends to be the consensus when you're looking at any of the bigger broadcast groups. Those are the people they're talking about. I think with Thibodeau, what hurt him was getting injured and then not really playing as much through the rest of that year.
Well, see, the key to this whole thing is Harbaugh's old buddy, Trent Baalke, is the GM for the Jaguars. And I've been on the show talking about he's awful. Like, have you seen the 49ers when he was there? It was pretty much everyone kind of gave him credit. Like, look at that team that he built for Harbaugh. And then it was kind of funny because once Harbaugh left, that team was complete shit. So the only positive that franchise has had up until that point had been Harbaugh until they made the change. And who's their GM now? I don't even know. That's when I think he got a lot of undue credit for something that Harbaugh put together. And you've seen how he's fallen off. So the fact that he's brought Walker in, and that's supposed to be his pick, the owner likes Hutchinson better, is what I've read. And we're going to see, does the GM get to make the pick? And the only reason Baalke likes Walker is he said that he has higher upside. The other two guys are more pro-ready right now. So if you're the owner, or hell, even if you're a fan of the Jaguars, and your general manager is telling you that the other two guys can step in and contribute right now, Matt, and help your team, but instead you want to go with a project, right? I just don't see how that pick would help you keep your job in a few years if it doesn't pan out.
Well, I think the Walker pick, like, for as crazy as this is going to sound, like, that was a guy that when I saw his combine stuff and how freakish, like, he came out, we talked about it on here a little bit, but it was like, that would be a guy that would be a fit for Pittsburgh. That they could put him in a rotational role with some of those other guys that they have and give him that time to grow within the system. I don't know that if you're drafting the front end, like, you need to get guys that are going to contribute immediately. And depending on how they're going to be used within the scheme, I think that like that's always the thing. Like, someone like Thibodeau had a lot more freakish like speed and stuff. But do you use? Like, I don't know that you use him at end as much as you use him as an outside backer.
Well, see, that's my entire thing right now. The Walker pick is just head scratching because, like you brought up, hey, I wonder if he could fit at Pittsburgh because people thought he would have been a later first round pick. He didn't put up the numbers at Georgia, and let's be honest, that Georgia team outmanned a lot of other teams, right? So, like, whenever he's outmanning people and he's not putting up the stats, and you're purely going off athleticism, to me, that as a number one pick, if I was a fan of the Jags, I would be like scratching my head. They made some head scratching moves this offseason, though, and so I wouldn't even know what to think. I honestly think that if you don't go with one of the two pro-ready guys, and I'm not even saying take Hutchinson over Thibodeau as like a bias thing, but I would just say pick one of the guys that can contribute right now with that number one pick, because injuries, you don't know how long someone's going to stay around, and come on, you have a young team. Like, I know you're going to hopefully build some of these guys up, but an impact player can go a long way. And so I just don't think I would be excited if my team was taking the number one pick and they just kept picking projects. Selfishly, I also don't want Hutchinson to go to the Lions. Because like, I think in that scenario, Hutchinson goes to the Lions and you know how they destroy careers. So then that would just end up, they'll be saying he's a bust. Or he could be like Sue. Did the Lions draft Sue? Or
yes.
he just ended up playing for them? I can't remember.
He was drafted by them.
And what happened to him? He was dominant force. He's been in the league forever because then they were like, hey, he is pretty good.
That's because he gets breaks from the suspensions, kicking people in the nuts and everything else.
Well, Matt, how rude you would go after someone's character like that.
Stomping on people.
So I'm just saying, overall number one, if it were me, I would pick Hutchinson. It's not even the injury thing to Thibodeau. Just watching how Hutchinson dominated, and I'm talking about like first round picks. Like you could see him at the combine. You could see he had a hell of a combine too, like putting up all time numbers. So if you're looking at the combine, I don't say how you could say, oh, Walker put up hell of a numbers, but then so did Hutchinson, and Hutchinson had the numbers on the field. I just don't see how you could make that the mental gymnastics to make that work and be like, you know what, he's better all around. Because at some point you have to look at value here. And then after that, like I don't even know, because you have the lineman from NC State that's high. You could also take the safety from Notre Dame if they're going someone crazy off the board. I think those are the other ones that I've seen floating around. Which I also don't say, like, why wouldn't you take offensive tackle? I think the other one is the Alabama guy. So you have two linemen, one from NC State, one from Alabama that could be number one, and one of the defensive guys, three ends and the safety. And if you have Trevor Lawrence, I would almost say I'm surprised they're not leaning offensive line, especially if you're going to take a project at defensive end, right? Because that would be the other thing that would annoy me. Is like, hey, our offensive line really blows, and they're like, but this defensive guy might be able to, turn into something special in a few years. It's like, might be in a few years. I heard the Bears say the same thing with Trubisky, and now he's starting quarterback for Pittsburgh. Because that's exactly why the Bears traded up. They're like, oh, his upside's just too good. He's a little raw right now. Don't worry, we'll be able to harness his talent. They couldn't do anything with him. And so that's where I called the Bears out on that pick. I thought it was awful. And we'll see if the Jaguars make that. Like, I just don't see how you could take a stretch pick if you have Trevor Lawrence. Personally, if I was making the pick, as much as I like Hutchinson, I'd probably go offensive line. But I'm going to say that they go defensive end, and I hope they pick Hutchinson. I bet they do pick Walker, though, just because Balky doesn't know what he's doing. That's my first one. Let's get into your pick, the quarterback pick. Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis, Matt? Who do you think goes first is the question.
I almost think that Pickett's going to end up going first.
Why? Because you want Willis to fall to the Steelers.
Well, I think Pittsburgh potentially moves up to grab him. I think they jump ahead of Carolina, which then forces Carolina's hand to take Pickett.
You think Carolina wants Pickett?
I think they're the only other real team seriously pushing for a quarterback right now.
I just don't know. I honestly still think there are good quarterbacks on the board, namely like Baker Mayfield. So I think that's not going to push these other teams to make a move, if I'm being honest. So that's leaving me a little hesitant to say one way or the other. I think people will pick Pickett more just because he played at a higher level, and that's normally how they go with these things. Although, I mean, didn't Carson Wentz go high? Was he the first one that year?
I believe so.
Like North Dakota or whatever, and then he didn't pan out. So that's even a lower level, though, isn't it?
He has a Super Bowl ring.
Matt, on the bench.
He was injured.
Someone sent me this thing. It was about the Colts, how Mel Kiper called out like the Colts for sticking with Jim Harbaugh as their quarterback. And instead of going with Trent Dilfer. And I was like thinking, is this supposed to be a slam on Harbaugh? Because Trent Dilfer didn't really work out. He got lucky with that one Super Bowl ring. But I wouldn't have said that he's a better NFL player than Harbaugh, right? I mean, I don't know how long their careers ended up being, but I don't know. So I think that's like another scenario here. Same type of thing. Do I think either of these guys will be a superstar? Honestly, I don't know. I think Willis has the higher upside though. I do like Pickett, but I mean, our boy Duck Hodges, Matt, he just retired.
He did.
So like what? That's the kind of feeling I get from like Pickett. You're gonna get some crazy games where he's confident or whatever, but if that gets beat out of him because he goes to a wrong fit team, he'll just be a broken man.
Well, and that's just it. Like I think with Pickett, he's coming from more of a pro style set. The system in Pittsburgh was more designed for that. So I think there's going to be a little bit more carryover from the Panthers to the Steelers. But I think with Willis, like if Matt Canada is willing to allow or to tailor some of those concepts to what Malik Willis already knows, I think you can allow Malik Willis to step in. And I don't even know, like, regardless of if they go with whatever quarterback they pick, hopefully they don't put them in a position where they have to start right off the bat. Maybe you give them a couple weeks to acclimate to the league and do all that stuff and allow the Rudolph Trubisky battle royale to start to say, we know this is like those guys aren't the long-term answer, but give them their opportunity to see what happens. And in the meantime, you have, because I think there's negatives with both. Like, there's not a quarterback that I think you can confidently say, oh yeah, this guy definitely is going to make a run. I mean, there's people that when you go back, there's a reason Brady fell to the 7th round because there were concerns. There's things that you just can't.
Wasn't he a 6th round pick?
6, he was 6, whatever.
Whoa.
I mean, he's late round.
Man, he's a legend. Round. You should know all the stats about him. I talk about him all the time.
You do obsessively.
And him and Barry Bonds, Matt, you should know better than to bring up anything about my man.
But I figured, like, if that was such a sure thing, they would have went 1st round. But you know, it's tough to nail down exactly what that situation is. And even with Brady, he was able to watch the legend Drew Bledsoe until he got his heart blown up.
First off, I thought you were going to say Brian Greasy at Michigan. I was like, where are you going with this? Legend in the Monday Night Football booth until they start making moves for they're like trading people in the booth. Did you see that? There's like a rumor that Drew Brees might be traded. I don't even know if it happened. I don't know when I saw it. I was probably late on it. But I'm like, that'd be funny. They didn't trade for him in the NFL for like the past 10 years while he was dying. Could have went to a contending team, but they'll trade for him in the booth.
Although I did see that there was more stuff that came out with Miami that they were saying that their original package was that they were going to send a number 2 for Brady and then a number 1 for Sean Payton.
So they think that Sean Payton's worth more than Tom Brady?
Yes.
I think that's because Brady only has like 1 year, and they figuring they can get Sean Payton hopefully for like 5 more years.
Well, yeah, as a coach, and you're getting the offense. You're getting a twofer out of Payton because he would call the offense too.
Well, see, so that makes more sense than the initial rumor of like them staging this coup where they just both randomly show up in Miami Dolphin shirts and they're like, "Hey, we're here."
I can't believe you did it.
Wait, this is your yacht? Flores, what are you doing on this boat? Thought they fired you. And then he'd be like, that's exactly what I wrote in my lawsuit. That's what I don't understand. And then even him taking the Steelers job, I mean, kind of hurts his case, right? Like, I don't even know why he would take another job. I think he should have stuck it out and fought it more. Because they're going to be like, look, you got another job in the NFL. What are you talking about? So, I don't know. That's why I'm still wondering. Like, I think more details are going to leak. But the initial rumor of like them tampering and Tom Brady just retiring and showing up as owner/player, like that would have just been so odd and weird. And he still would have had the Bucs contract. But them making a move for him would have been different.
And I think, like, given that he's going to be 45 this year, like, a 2 would be reasonable, knowing you're probably only going to get maybe a year or 2 out of it. Like, that would have been a reasonable pick for Miami, knowing that they're just going to go all in for one run.
And that makes me really believe that Arians got pushed out. Like, he was like staying around thinking, yeah, we might get rid of Tom Brady here, and whatever he was doing, or now he's like, oh wait, we're gonna have Tom Brady here, and he doesn't get along with me, so I'm gonna be in the manager's chair. I'll be making poor draft decisions or whatever he's even doing. So I don't know. Let's see. I'll just do one more of these. Who do you think is going to be the first wide receiver picked?
Oh,
because this could definitely impact my Packers, Matt.
I could see Pickens being the first receiver to come off the board just because of how physical he is. I know he's not going to be the most popular pick, but I think he could end up being one just because his dad played in the league for a long time. Like every cut up that they show of him, he's like bullying the defensive backs. Like I think that could be something that draws more hype to him.
So I was looking and seeing that who they had. They had Garrett Wilson from Ohio State, which I think he's another pick that he's up there based on talent and stuff and some of his freak athleticism.
But I think like that's crazy that they have him going first when there are people that were talking about how Olave is like the best receiver to ever come out of Ohio State.
Olave, yeah. I said, well, that's about his route running and stuff.
But that's still like that's such an insult because like, what about David Boston? All those muscles.
You remember when he fought Charles Woodson?
Terry Glenn. Like there's some Joey Galley. There's like some pretty good receivers that came out of Ohio State, and like I don't know that he's like that good.
So when he wins 3 Super Bowl MVPs, I'll clip that for you.
I'm sure you will.
I'll probably forget that you even talked about it because it's an Ohio State guy, Matt. Why would I care?
I should have gotten points for naming 3 Ohio State receivers.
I knew David Boston, and I knew the 3 that you named. I think everyone knows those guys. Galloway's still on TV. He still gets upset when they talk about the Buckeyes and Urban Meyer stuff. He was a little heated over there. I saw him like doing his breakdown. And then, of course, like Urban's back on campus anyway. They do have another pick on here that I just saw. They're wondering which school will have the most players drafted. And I'm not even going to have you pick off the top of your head. I just want to read who they have in the running. They don't even have them in the running. So the 4 teams that they have at the top are Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan, and Cincinnati as the favorite. they have Michigan in the number 2 slot if they were taking odds, which is weird. It doesn't tell me what the odds would be.
Well, that's insane that you don't just have Alabama.
I know, like, why would you have Cincinnati? Like, I could see Michigan, like, oh yeah, they've been getting people drafted, and then they put in here in the past 20 years. I don't know why they went 20 years. Ohio State has 139, Notre Dame 93, Michigan 90, and Cincinnati 36. Like even a couple years ago with Harbaugh, I think Michigan's been averaging like around 10 people or maybe lower. That one year, didn't they have like 13 or 14? They went number 1. Like Cincinnati would have to have a third of their last 20 years in 1 year to match that, right?
Yeah.
Because LSU had a crazy number like that when they won the championship, right? So, like, I think it's going to be tough. I didn't even expect Michigan to have enough to be number 1. I think they have a couple higher this year, but not as deep. I think they have a lot of guys returning. So, if they had that many people drafted, I would kind of be surprised and be like, wait, how many people left again? I didn't think they're all leaving. So, we'll find out what happens. I did want to bring up, John Lynch is the 49ers GM. He kind of turned it around. I knew there was someone that they got big hire, but for some reason I almost said his name, but then I thought, wait, is he still with the Broncos?
Well, yeah, but Debo, like,
that's why I bring it up.
Daniel's trying to get out.
Yeah, because who wants to be there? Because the owner's a jerk. I mean, the owner wrote all those articles about, like, he leaked all the stuff to the press about Harbaugh, and then he's been leaking it to the press about all his coaches and stuff and players. And it's like, all right, after a certain amount of time, if the owner keeps doing it, it's the owner, right? It's not Harbaugh, because you would remember the thing was, oh, Harbaugh only lasts 4 years. He gets burnt out and everyone hates him. It's like, well, he's still in Michigan and no one's hating him. He's taking other job offers and like excited about them, but then he's still coming back because it's not like he's a jerk and they're pushing him out, telling him like, yeah, you got to get to the NFL. What are you doing? Right? That's how the 49ers made it seem. It was like, oh, Stanford pushed him out. There's no way Stanford pushed him out. Stanford would still take Harbaugh back in a heartbeat. I actually just saw an article about Kansas was going to offer Harbaugh the job before the Stanford one, I believe. I don't know if it was the exact year, but they had a chance to land Jim Harbaugh right after so it had to have been around that year. It was 2 years right after their Orange Bowl season, around like 2008 or so. And then Harbaugh told them that he would have taken it. And they went and hired Turner Gill instead. Have been awful ever since. So it's crazy. So I just don't understand, because he was already at Stanford, I think, at that point. I don't even know if it was the year where he blew out USC, didn't he? And then Pete Carroll came over and yelled, "What's your deal?" Because he kept running the score up on him. And the USC team was like one of the top teams, so like for Stanford to even beat them, let alone be able to get the score run up on them, is just funny, because that basically set the tone for that Stanford program. So, like, why would Pete Carroll be mad? Does other coaches from, like, San Jose State come over and ask him what his deal is when USC is winning 63-4 or whatever? 7. It's like, oh, hey, what's your deal? Hey, Stanford's not supposed to beat us. What are you doing? But going back to the Niners, like, if Deebo Samuel leaves, and then Garoppolo, right? Because I'm telling you, the Garoppolo thing has to hurt their player retention. Because how can you tell a guy, hey, this guy had us in like the NFC Championship game or however far they went this year, and then in the offseason you're like, we got to get rid of that guy. Still got to get rid of him. All the other teams have great quarterbacks that don't even really make the playoffs, man. And then like even Kyler Murray, like what has he done in comparison to Garoppolo? Nothing. He's done absolutely nothing. And so like what's the upside? You're like, well, we got to give our other guy a shot. We might lose him. And then even other teams are inquiring about like Jordan Love now, which I don't know if I saw. Was it the Panthers that had said that they were really interested in him? It's like, what are they doing? Just putting all the quarterback names in a hat and picking them out? They're like, hey, is Watson available? What about Jordan Love? Baker? That's the Panthers thing right now. So if them and the Steelers end up fighting for quarterback, I'm going to end up laughing, Matt. That's my prediction. That the Panthers make a move at quarterback. I just don't know what it's going to be. And if it ends up messing with the Steelers' quarterback room, because I could even see something crazy where, what if they worked out a deal for Mitch Trubisky? He played quarterback at UNC. And the Steelers were like, hey, we're just going to rebuild with someone else. That would be hilarious to me. Because, like, why would you not just turn the quarterback room over? After the Haskins tragedy, right? I honestly thought Haskins was the leader. You lose him. Trubisky's never going to be the guy. So to be stuck with him, and I'm nothing against him, I'm talking about football only here. And then Rudolph, which you know is like a backup. Honestly, what would you do if you're in the quarterback room? Like, let's try to make a deal here. That's my draft prediction. I don't know what's going to happen, but for the Steelers, I don't know what direction they go from that. And honestly, the other teams, like I said, the Lions, if Hutchinson drops, I hope he drops to like third or fourth. I hope they go with like a wide receiver or someone.
I did think it was a little bit interesting that you brought up about the possibility of Baker Mayfield for some of these teams that need a quarterback, because I just don't know what Cleveland would expect in return for him, because they traded a Powell to get Deshaun Watson, and he's still up in the air with the potential of some of those allegations.
Yep, and I'm getting a lot of heat for defending Baker. I don't know why people don't think he's like a solid quarterback. Like, he's a solid quarterback. Look at his numbers. Like, I already said that he's been comparable to like what Watson had. He just got hurt last year, and I guarantee the Browns' locker room is going to be fractured. Right? I don't see how you lose a leader. And people have been making fun of, like, oh, he's in commercials. It's like, yeah, but he can still be a winning quarterback. Patrick Mahomes has been in a bunch of quarterbacks, and people salivate over him.
But I think a lot of that depends on how, like, what does Watson's leadership potential bring? Like, when he gets into the room and he's going through some of that minicamp stuff. I mean, if he tries to pull like a Jay Schrader where he's above the team, it could definitely fracture that locker room. But if he comes in, you know, just being like, I have these court things, I need to get them cleared up, I'm innocent, and
that's not going to be a good locker room building. If the first time you meet the guy, he's like, look, guys, I definitely didn't do anything with the masseuse. Like, yo, come on. All those allegations, not true. Here's why. And like, he's like spilling it out. Meanwhile, the other guy was like, hey, we were one blown call away from going to the championship game or the Super Bowl, whatever playoff game that was in, when they overturned that weird fumble with the helmet. And the Chiefs won or whatever was at the Bills. I forget even who they were playing. But then Baker plays hurt. It's like, hey, we are making some moves on the roster. Like, just get him out of there. I don't think he would be a bad fit. And he's more exciting than, like, in terms of, like, the Panthers, he's more exciting than Sam Darnold. Like, if you're looking at, hey, who can we get in here and who's going to get the fans excited? It's not Sam Darnold. You can get a rookie quarterback in, but I don't think either of those guys is as exciting as, like, hey, let's bring in like a hometown boy like Watson who played at Clemson that's not that far away from their stadium. Like, that was a move that made sense. You can come home, be closer. I don't know where he's from, though. Maybe he's not even from South Carolina or North Carolina. So that's why I think the Panthers were kind of pushing for that as like a waiver for the NFL. So now that the fact that the Browns went and cut him off, it's like, all right, well, we'll take Baker. And hey, who knows? Like, if you're gambling, I don't think you can flat out say, well, the Browns are going to be Super Bowl contenders now, because ESPN's been saying that for the past 5 years, Matt.
Is Cam Newton still under contract with Carolina as well?
I don't know. I don't know what the Cam situation is, but he's always like there if they need him.
Well, that like, I was trying to find it today, because I know like Carolina still has Darnold, and they re-signed Cam later in the season. So, like, they may not even be in as Well, yeah, I think for like with the quarterback situation, I think the top two are going to be Pickett and Willis. Like they've consistently been higher because I think with Corral, he had the injury, so there's still some questions about how healthy he's going to be coming back. You know, with Ritter playing at Cincinnati, having that smaller school, like there's some potential red flags there. But there's a lot of those guys are going to be available rounds 2 and 3 potentially. That maybe the route is to hold off, knowing that there's a lot of depth like at wide receiver and different stuff that I can hold off and wait in the first round, pick or say a receiver or defensive back, and then either trade back into a later first round or get into the second round and pick whichever quarterback you feel like is going to move the needle for you later on. I mean, I think that may be even from Pittsburgh's standpoint, that's a smarter move, that you fill some of those holes that you need, especially if the availability of one of the better offensive linemen's available. I think you're insane not to go that route first.
Well, Pittsburgh, I was going to say, when they had Haskins, that's what I think they should have done. Like, if Willis gets taken off the board and Pickett's gone, you need to wait. And I don't think they should even trade it up for either of those guys. I think that they would have waited. But now you're in a different situation where I'm not confident in either of their quarterbacks going forward. The Panthers, like you said, they have the luxury of having Cam there. He's like the 50-year-old dude at the pickup basketball gym, Matt, that his kids are like in college now, so he always has free time. And he just hangs out and he's like, yo, you need a fifth? I'll hop in. It's like, that's how Cam is. He's like the older guy. They're like, yeah, this guy kind of knows. He's been playing ball for a bunch of years. He doesn't have the stamina to go a bunch of games, so he might have to peace out after a bit. But he'll play. He'll fill in.
Just be that batting ram on the goal line.
Yeah, he'll just be there, and he'll take the heat off your other guy too. So if they do bring in a rookie quarterback, everyone's going to be covering Cam in the media. He takes that pressure off everyone else, which I think is another key too. Like, none of the Steelers quarterbacks do that. There's no way Rudolph or Trubisky handle the media better than like a Cam would, you know?
Well, they couldn't handle it better than Roethlisberger. I'm not here to be a mentor. And then they talk about how great he is for the locker room. Like, well, get the hell out of here. Go ride your motorcycle without your helmet.
The Steelers didn't have a lot of media that were like breathing down their neck all the time. So
they would ask him, be like, "Oh, you're gonna help him out?" Nah, that ain't my job.
No, my job, I've been spending 2 hours cutting together this workout film so it looks like I can throw the ball. What are you doing? What are you talking about? I don't have time to mentor these guys.
I got to get to Chipotle.
I'm taking 50 takes of me pretending to throw this ball. I still got a motorcycle course I have to take from his accident. It's like, oh my gosh, Ben. Off the field stuff. People think like he was clean off the field too after that other incident. It's like, man, he had so many things that early in his career. Like, you would never have thought that he would have ended up having such a long career and turning it around. So,
but that just goes to show, if you sign a $100 million contract and you hire bodyguards to keep making you to behave yourself, everything works itself out.
All right, you have anything else for the NFL?
No.
All right, talking about off the field stuff. My man Mike Tyson, Matt. They a guy on the plane. Did you see the video?
Time out. Seriously. How many beers would you have to drink to egg Mike Tyson on?
Matt, I saw the video. The guy is not smart. I mean, he definitely looked like one of those gym tough guys that probably didn't really play sports. And then they played dumb, him and his buddy that filmed it. Did you see how they cut that film together? Where he was instigating him. Didn't he dump a beer on him or something? Or hit him with a water bottle? Like, he had water, and in the video, he's like asking him, should I do it? Should I do it? And like, if I was filming, I would have egged you on and said like, yeah, Matt, do it. Because I knew you would be punched, right?
Well, I'm going to answer your question for you. Infinity. I would have to drink infinity beers, and I don't even care how old he is.
On the plane, you would have gone for the Wade Boggs, Matt?
Infinity. I would have drank infinity beers because that's how many it would have taken. I would never disrespect the champ. The true champ.
First off, let's just say that should go for anybody. Like, I would never dump a beer, throw water or a bottle like at anyone like that, celebrity or not. To like try to get punched, like that just seems weird because now like you know that people just hate you. Like no one thinks you're cool for that move. Like just do the regular thing. Like, hey Mike, cool. Then I think he took a picture with them. Like the champ already did everything that he was supposed to do. Like that's the interaction. It's over right there. You're on a plane with them. Look up something on your phone. Fall asleep. Do something else, man. But don't bother them.
Yes. And also, you know that's Mike Tyson. He's been punched in the head countless times. You know that there's CTE. You don't have to wonder. I wonder if there is. It's there. It's legitimately there. So why would you even go there? You know he bit a guy's ear off. How fucking stupid do you gotta be? Like, you know he will go to he'll go to that place you can't go to.
He did bite the ear. He's like the only guy ever to do that, right? In boxing, maybe there's another guy that did it after.
Yes. No, there can't be. Because everyone else after that was like, I can't believe he bit that guy's ear.
Because in a normal fight, that would be like in a street fight. I don't even know if I would try to go there. Like, I would try to think of like something else, like gouge an eye or something. But I guess you have the gloves on, right? So that's like the natural move. But I don't know. But that would never have entered my mind because, like, how many times have you been wrestling growing up? And it never once thought in my mind, like, I should bite the guy's ear.
And there's countless videos of Tyson, like, still training that all one punch will just completely destroy your life.
Yeah, all he does is train. And then the guy's head was, like, messed up. You could tell. I think he had a ring on. He didn't get any good blows in because the kid immediately like covered up. If you watch,
well, I was gonna say like, there's no way that he didn't haul off with full force because he would have caved his head in.
Well, yeah, the kid was definitely like ducking cover, and it looked like they were like on the top of his head. So it looked like he got like maybe two hits in with his left hand. Because that would be his ring hand, unless he wore a ring on the right hand. Because they looked like ring cuts if you've ever seen a fight. So I figured he's wearing like a wedding ring or something. I don't know. Is he married? I have no idea. I don't care about athletes or like their personal life. So I've never once looked up, is Mike Tyson married? You know? So I have no idea. But I just assume that's when I've seen fights like that, that's basically what it looked like. The wedding ring cut the guy's head like 3 or 4 times. And then that was it. It'd be over in like 5 seconds, right? I mean, you could deliver a bunch of blows as fast as you can. Like that's basically one big fury combo. So I don't know. I would never do that. And I feel bad for Mike. All the video made me do is feel even worse for the guy. Because the guy probably just wants to be left alone. He doesn't want the attention. He just wants to be on the flight. He said hi, took the picture. There's no way. Like if they try to press charges on him and if any jury brings anything against him, I would just be like, or a judge. No respect for the judge either. Because I guarantee they'll be like, well, Mike Tyson had some weird other off the field things, but you're right. He got punched in the head a bunch, so who knows? It's not like they're studying boxers, you know. It's always football. Only football. They don't bring up any other sports besides soccer now. Because like the NFL, I guarantee the NFL paid for those soccer studies too. Because they're probably like, hey, we're getting too much heat on us. Soccer's like the biggest sport in the world. Let's go after them. They do head the ball a bunch. To
answer your question, Tyson, you know he's crazy because he got married 3 times. He's currently married. I would have gambled that.
Did you look that up?
I did. I had to look
Thank God.
it up.
I didn't know. I was hoping you didn't know that.
No, because I would have gambled and I would have said, you're watching someone bite somebody's ear off. I'm going to say that's probably a hard no for getting married. No, he did it 3 times. So I can understand getting married once. But then once you get out of your marriage to think, oh yeah, this next time is going to be the right one. I don't care if you're a boxing champ or just some random person. Why would you get married again if you're a guy? There's no positive unless you're marrying for money. You're trying to flip your financial class. You don't go into that marriage and go, hey, I'm going to decide what to do. Your wife's going to be like, nah, here's a bunch of things that you need to be doing. That's never going to work out to your advantage.
I've told my friends that I would only ever go to their first wedding and that's it. And they think I'm like joking. Like, what do you think? I'm going to be going to multiple weddings?
I told my wife all the time, I will never get married again. I won't even remarry again. I was married once, and that is it.
You get one time, people are like setting up remarriages, like, hey, I'm having my third wedding. We're going to fly to Hawaii. It's like, no,
Nope.
no, son, I'd never do that.
No, dog. That's a hard no.
That's a no for me. I don't even know if I want to return this invitation at that point, because why did you send this to me? So, oh man, I did have another sports moment. A JUCO baseball player, which people were talking trash on JUCO. It's like, why would you talk trash on junior college baseball, saying like it's such a low level when minor league baseball? I mean, the single A is probably even worse. Like, what's the difference between? It's probably the same exact guys playing JUCO that would be playing whatever. Cam Newton played JUCO. We just talked about Cam Newton for like 5-10 minutes. So like, people are like attacking JUCO baseball. I don't get it. But the guy hit a home run, and he was talking trash, which, Matt, that hit close to home to me because I've been on that path where I'm the one talking trash running the bases, Matt. And I've never had a pitcher tackle me. Although the ump in the video, so the guy hits a home run, he runs around second, he says something, the ump points at him. I don't know if it's ever been clarified what he said. The ump points at him, gives him a warning. When he rounds third, the pitcher gives him like a Lawrence Taylor or even a Troy Polamalu hit, Matt. Like, devastating hit. And I thought it was funny that like no one was even paying attention to him to even give the kid a warning. Like the third base coach, I don't know what the hell he was looking at, but like, was he checking his phone? Like, was he looking at the outfield? Is there someone in the stands he's checking out? Like, why aren't you not watching the field? Like, that's literally your job, is to keep your players safe and be like, hey, yo, this pitcher's coming at you. Like, nope, he's just standing there. Like, just hanging out here on the third baseline. Probably like zoned out, wondering how much junior college coaching even gets paid. But that's the one thing that stood out to me is like, you're the coach. What are you looking at? Like, the ball already landed. So, like, unless you're trying to see who's getting the ball so you can get it back for a souvenir, but you let someone else do that. I have no idea why the coach wasn't watching. Now, the ump was there. He was just too slow because the player kind of ran up beside him. But if you want to watch the video, I think it was Weatherford College. I think the pitcher was, like, cut from the team. And I think the other guy was even suspended, too, the batter, for saying something. But I'm like, why cut the guy from the team? It's junior college baseball. Who cares? I said the same thing. Like, minor league guys get cut all the time, but like the dude's going for the education. I do like how some schools have been keeping the scholarships. I don't know if junior college even gives scholarships though. But like, why not just give the kid a suspension? Why cut him? That's why I brought it up. I don't understand.
I don't like cutting.
It's like the same thing. Didn't we have a coach thing like last week, or he cut like the entire team? And I told you about it. Like, if you're a new coach, like that's a different scenario. Because like you're telling them like, hey, I don't want it to seem like I'm flip flopping. Why I brought that up? Because you're a brand new coach. Your job is to win. This is one of your guys. He's on your team. He's been working hard for you. Yeah, he got in the heat of the moment. Like, suspend him, but like, don't just cut the guy.
And the only exception that I will say to that is if that is a continued case. Like if this is the first time that this player has had any kind of issue, yeah, work with him. But if it's like you're constantly just having to be like, would you please just knock it off, knock it off, knock it off, and now you're making national headlines for being a turd. It's like, all right, go, you got to go.
I don't know, Matt. I learned from the great Joe Paterno that you could keep ignoring it as long as you talk to the other people that are involved and make sure that they're okay. Which, of course, that's a sarcasm. So, but if you read that story, which I still didn't finish that story, it is super long. I'm like, holy crap! I try to read it, I fall asleep. I'm like, all these stories, but it is crazy that Joe Paterno just shows up and he's like talking the girl up, and then the girl's like, "Wait, are you Joe Paterno? I know your voice." And he's like, "Wait, huh?" He like just calls her out of the blue, like, "Hey, I heard you had an incident. Are you okay?" It's like, "Wait, are you Joe Paterno?" That's just crazy to me. So let's get back into some other football. The USFL week 2 happened, and the television numbers are up. I put that they're pretty solid numbers for them because honestly, I thought they would be much lower. They did hit the million, which is a number that we were talking about with the XFL. Someone put out the comparison numbers. They don't have the NBA on here. I'm always curious what the NBA is doing. Although, isn't the NBA in playoff mode now?
Yes.
So, that would be the difference. It's not a regular season game. But we regularly see NBA games get anywhere from less than $1 million up on like a good game, maybe $3 million for regular season, unless it's like a very high profile game. The Major League Baseball was the only sport that beat it with 1.11 million. A USFL had 1.06. And barely over it. They're right above Formula One, which everyone talks about being a great draw. The other game was like at 400K. So less than 500,000. Around what the NHL gets. Which again, NHL, that's on cable. Which is comparative to what like the NHL on TNT, which I'll be honest, I didn't even know that they were on TNT. There's one that I don't think is even on here. But the third one was like at 800K. So not quite $1 million, but it was right up there, which would have been like third overall. No, fourth overall. Yeah, I was right the first time, after Formula One. So pretty strong numbers. I hope the league keeps going and innovating. I'll just be honest, I just don't know where it's going to fit with the other leagues. I just don't think it's going to survive with that and the XFL. And personally, I prefer the XFL. Right? We talked about it with the USFL. Went off last week on how they're trying to like make it into more of like a reality thing. Getting rid of my boy Devion Smith, and then battling it with him like on the internet, which I saw people were like, hey, the guy's really hurting his professional chances. Like, guys, you don't realize he's already played in all those leagues we talked about last year. Or last week. We talked about him. This is his last chance pretty much. Like, they're not going to bring him back into another league and then be like, well, we did see that video from the USFL. Like, I think he realizes that was his last chance. And he said that they lied to him. Like, that would be a pretty shitty way to go out, right? You're like, hey, this is my last chance. I'm doing pretty good here. They make up some weird pizza excuse. They cut you, and then they put you on blast on the internet. And then you try to defend yourself, and they put out even a worse statement saying, well, there were other incidents we just didn't tell them about,
Yeah.
And then you're sitting at home wondering, like, well, really, this is how my career ends? So, I don't know. Very annoying. But what stood out to you with the USFL? I honestly didn't even get a chance to watch too much of it. So,
well, the one thing that I saw was that they were talking about how there was the chip in the ball that was causing an effect, and they worked with the quarterbacks and specialists like the kickers and punters, and were able to make adjustments so that whatever was going on with the balls, it seemed to be a little bit more resolved. You saw more scoring in some of the games. So I think that was definitely, whatever technology that they were using, it definitely did seem like it was having an effect in week one, and that they were able to resolve it, which kudos to the league, because they could have stubbornly just said, no, this is a technology that we're using, and we're going to ride this out, and then potentially continue to have issues going forward.
And the other thing that, going along with the chip in the ball and like all that stuff, the one thing that I don't like on top of that is the division format. Why you have a division? The divisions work if you're following what I had laid out last week, where they're doing regional games, but you're all at one site. Like, I know that they did it for scheduling, so they can say you play each division team twice, and then you play the other teams once or whatever their schedule ends up being. But like, I almost would have liked it if they just said, hey, we have 8 teams, we have a rival, you play the rival twice, you play the other teams once. That's the 8-game schedule. I don't even know how many games they're playing. Let's see if this has it on here. Because the one thing right now, you have two 2-0 teams in the South, You could have your best teams in the South, and then the teams in the North are going to be complete garbage. And then if you play your championship game, so it looks like they're going 10 weeks, which is like what I said. So they're doing the 6 games, the 2 in your division, and then one of each other one. So it's like, why are you playing 10 weeks? People aren't going to watch it if the same teams like are playing each other and they suck, right? Why? Like, just go with the 8-game schedule and then have like a 16 playoff. Like, eliminate the bottom 2 teams and give the top 2 teams a bye, and then do whatever. Like, have a play-in for that extra week. I think that would be more meaningful, because I think more people would tune in for a playoff match than not. Having 2 extra regular season games, to me, does nothing. Maybe the TV partners wanted it. Hell, whatever. But they're not regional games. The teams aren't traveling. So the fact that now you're going to have potentially, and I know it's early, but you're going to have one division full of crap teams possibly, which, let's be honest, the Pittsburgh team, the Marauders, the one that cut De'Veon Smith, you knew their team was going to be the worst in the league. Right now, they're dead last if you look at the differential. Like, if you saw what the coach was talking about, and all the stuff that he was peddling, that's how I knew he was lying in that video. And he was talking about, hey, this is my first job. I got to make sure people know that I mean business. Like, dude, I don't care about any of that. That's a dumb reason to cut someone and make a video about it. So, they'll probably be dead last. And yet, they could play the Panthers, the Michigan team, and they're 0-2 as well, Matt. So you could have one division of garbage, and then the other team is like, you're not going to have an even match. Like, that's why I like the old, like the round robin, like how the Big 12 was doing it. Now they're expanding. It's like, okay, cool. Expand it, water it down, do whatever you're doing. They don't even have to expand it. Just do an 8-game schedule and say, hey, we're doing 8 games. And then, hell, you could even have an 18 playoff, but I don't think that's feasible, because then there's like no point to the regular season at all. If you do a 16 playoff, you get the bye, so there's meaning for the top teams to keep battling, and you get the thing, and then you have 3 weeks of playoffs instead. You have that opening round, the second round, which would be 2 games. You could do it maybe Sunday night if the NFL, when you're doing it in the spring, so like the NFL's not on, try to do their 1 p.m. and their 4 p.m. or whatever they do for their playoffs. Keep it the same exact schedule. Like, I could write out how they should do it, and it would make more sense than what they're doing. So that's the logical thing that annoys me. But hopefully we get some more highlights and stuff that we're talking about, because I remember some big time XFL games, like with Cardell Jones, like having a big comeback and stuff. It's like, so far the USFL, I haven't really felt that. There's been some pretty bad blowouts and some high scoring games, and it's like, all right, well, I don't know how good these teams are, and you're not giving me a reason to watch them. So, like, why would I tune in? So I'm surprised. I want to see if they can keep hitting 1 million. If they can hit 1 million by like week 6, then I'll be surprised. But the stands are empty, right?
They are empty.
Like, that's why you're in Birmingham. I said it last week. Why the hell did you pick Birmingham? They're empty. It's embarrassing to people watching on the game. Everyone hated the empty field for the NFL, and they said that's why the ratings went down. So it can't help. You picked in the middle of nowhere, and you put together teams that people have no ties to. It's not even like you picked a college town. Like, wasn't that what the AAF deal was? They try to get people from the college to play close by, so the fans would possibly go to it. But I don't know. Anything else you have on that?
Not necessarily with the USFL, because I mean, I still feel like they tried to have some draw, but I still feel like there's a lot of players that are in that league that they could have. I don't know if it was that they chose not to, or that they're like what route they were going as far as player, like with the players that they're selected, but they're outside of like those higher profile, like the Shea Patterson going to the Michigan team. Like, there's not a lot of guys that stood out, or the Tiamo from that was in the XFL that's playing for Tampa Bay right now. Like, there's not a lot of rememberable type players.
And that's the one thing that I hope the XFL can go with. You got to take advantage of players that don't get drafted that were good. Like, I always think back to like Brad Banks almost won the Heisman at Iowa. Didn't get drafted by the NFL. Like, that would be the premier guy for the XFL to be able to get a guy that said like, hey, you had a hell of a year as a quarterback. Being an XFL or an NFL light kind of worries me, because are you just taking guys that were at training camp that didn't work out? Because that's kind of what the AAF did, right? So it might have been guys that end up being drafted and like kind of flashed out, and people might remember them. Like, I almost wonder if they can keep getting an influx of their own draft after the NFL. Like, after training camp, if those guys didn't stick with the team, do your own draft. Like, that's what I want to see the XFL do. I can't think of any other quarterbacks that might have been like a big time that didn't get drafted though, right? Maybe like a guy like Tebow, but he got drafted as a quarterback or whatever, where a guy where they're like, hey, we're going to draft you as a tight end, or Eric Crouch. And he's like a wide receiver or running back, what were they drafted him as? And then the XFL could say like, no, come play as a quarterback here. And if you work out, who knows? Maybe you'll get that chance. But those are guys like 20 years ago.
But I also think like with these, like with the USFL, and what I always liked with the XFL was that they took some of those schemes that maybe people said, well, you can't do that in the NFL. And they were showing that you could actually make those types of schemes work at a more professional level and have that success. Where with the NFL, I think that's one of the drawbacks that you see with the NFL is that everyone looks at, okay, Kansas City is doing well. So I'm going to hire their quarterback coach, their offensive coordinator, their running backs coach, and I'm going to take those, like the offensive line coach. I'm going to hire all those position coaches. I'm going to hire them onto my team and either make them the head coach or the offensive coordinator, so that they're going to take that whole scheme, apply it to my team. And so what you end up with is you have now 6 teams running Kansas City's offense. And then those guys branch off. And I know that, it is a copycat league. We've talked about that before. But where you have that so heavily concentrated in one type of style, I think that's going to hurt the league, because you're not going to be able to highlight different styles of player. And it's basically just going to be, we're all competing for the same type person, which doesn't make for a more competitive style league.
And that's one of the things that I want to see too. Like, I want to see a guy like come in, like you brought a Ritter coming up, and they're like, well, he's from a smaller school. They don't run a traditional NFL offense. Like, he could end up falling off the board or whatever. Like, in the XFL, let him run that offense though, and see what happens. Like, I don't see that the NFL teams, like, they're still looking and seeing guys like Aaron Rodgers, and like when Drew Brees and Tom Brady, even to an extent, like doing it for so long, and Ben Roethlisberger, where they're just running around and like just hitting NFL type plays, and it's like, well, these guys are doing it. That's how you have to do it to win. And you see Mahomes kind of break that mold, where now there's kind of like a split where teams are either going all in on that offense, and you could even argue and say like the Ravens had started that first. But now you're coming back and you're like, all right, are you going to go with that more up tempo, spread, speed, even if you're run focused like offense, or are you just going to go with their traditional drop back QB and salivate over dudes like Wentz and Trubisky for their measurables? I don't know. We'll see what happens in the draft, right?
Yeah.
So what direction are they going to go in? That's what I'm looking to see. But we'll be back next week. Probably end up having a longer show because I know I'm going to be heated for the draft after it happens. And I think there are going to be other moves because, like I said, too many quarterbacks still on the board that, like, the Browns and the Niners, I don't think are going to make it to the season with both quarterbacks. We might have to have a special show in the summer when one of those deals go down. But I don't think it's going to happen before the draft, but I could be wrong. It really depends on what happens. I think you might see some moves whenever those first two quarterbacks getting taken off the board. Because, like, would it surprise me if the Steelers ended up doing, like, some weird trade and ended up with, like, Garoppolo or something? No. Why would that surprise me? Like, they're already going all in, trying to extend, like, their big-time defensive players. Why not get a guy that has played in a defensive-first system and been successful in that? Like, all right, cool. The final bell, I did have one other thing. They talked about the NCAA football. I didn't put it on the big board because I figured it's going to come up a few more times. So they had their meeting for the playoff expansion. And I guess a lot of schools were really pushing for that expanded playoff. And one of the quotes, I forget what reporter put it out there. If you search it on Twitter, I'm sure you'll find it. He said that one of the schools blurted out, like, okay, well, we can congratulate Alabama on making the next 4 national championship games then, if we're not expanding it. And I saw a lot of people were like, well, if you expanded it, Alabama is going to be there anyway. And they might even have a better chance. But they wouldn't have a better chance. The only way they'd have a better chance is if you add in the bye weeks, like I've been against the entire time. Because now they're going to have to play. And if you tell me, well, Alabama's better than everyone, there's a good chance they're going to win. How many times have they gone undefeated? Like, they haven't been going undefeated, right?
Yeah, they haven't gone undefeated.
So that's why people don't understand. They see Alabama, oh, they're always in it, because they've been getting the extra, oh, well, that's okay, you haven't a loss. Like, they've been getting that extra chance for no reason. Like, last year they played their way in, beating Georgia, and I honestly said, and I knew it hurt Michigan at the time, but the Alabama and Georgia should have played again. They should have played, Michigan should have played Cincinnati. You might have ended up with the same exact matchups. Georgia paced Alabama and then paced Michigan in the national championship game. What would have been the difference, Matt? There would have been no difference to that. None of the games were close. No playoff games close. Georgia was just so much better that losing in the SEC championship game really made them focus. The only way that the playoff would have been better is if you left either Alabama or Georgia out. And they didn't do that. So at that point, why not expand it? Right? Like, if Oklahoma State wouldn't have lost, I think we would have had a much better playoff. I don't think it would have been as close, but I think one of the games would have been closer. Right? I think, like, you wouldn't have had the 2 blowouts. Like, I think whoever Cincinnati played, they probably would have got a double-digit win over Cincinnati. Nothing against Cincinnati. But some of those other teams were really, like, Georgia and Michigan had a lot more talent than Cincinnati. Although, who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe when the draft board comes up, maybe Cincinnati has the most players drafted. We'll find out. But, I mean, like, they're not talking about any of the top Cincinnati players being, like, the number 1 pick. So that's where I'm going to leave that. The other thing that kind of puts a wrench into this, which I don't know if you saw this. Well, Jay Wright miraculously retired, Matt. Did you see that? I didn't bring that up either. I think I forgot about it. There were rumors about him doing it last week. Which, all these old coaches with the NIL coming out, they've just been, retiring. Kind of funny, right? All the guys that have been tied to, just paying players, or like having schemes where they just have credit cards and those players go out and buy stuff and then they get put on sanctions like Jay Wright did. What happens, man? They just miraculously have to retire, and then someone has said that someone in his family might be sick or something. And he is like 60 years old, so I'm not knocking him. Nick Saban's much older, and he's still going. But the timing just seems strange. Like, whenever you just retire for health, like Chris Peterson did too, and I was wondering why he did. Like, he's gonna step away and do whatever? Maybe he did just hate them. Maybe he just hated the recruiting and everything and coaching, and the kids were just disrespectful. He couldn't take it. I don't know. But I find it odd that you were in the Final Four, and now he's talking about possibly going in. I mean, ESPN had a whole thing about how he's going to be the coach when Coach K steps down. But instead, he decides to just hide in Coach K's shadow anyway. It's like, yeah, we had the big Coach K going away. I'll just retire a little bit after, I don't want the spotlight on my program. So, and whatever. If you don't want me to talk trash on your program, don't get sanctioned, right? Like, don't have players get credit cards whenever your team's garbage. And you need to really get some recruits in there. So you can't tell me that them being on the Adidas report or whatever, which somehow gets brushed under the rug, like no one talks about it. They're all cool with it. Like Kansas still might get penalized, which, oh great, they'll just take another championship away from the team where it doesn't really matter. But I did want to bring it up because the NILs, Matt, I think that they're going to help some of the other blue bloods like North Carolina even more than what we've been seeing. Because North Carolina made a pretty deep run because of COVID, and I said their rosters has a lot of like upperclassmen. And guess what? They're not going pro. UNC could come back with a loaded roster. And I've bitched about Michigan losing guys for like 5 years now. For like, hey, why are these guys just going to the NFL or the NBA when Michigan State loses like nobody? And they always have like 5-year seniors with Izzo.
Yep.
It's like, how's it Michigan State keeping these guys? Are they paying them? Probably were. Right?
Or maybe you just enjoy the college atmosphere.
Yeah, some colleges, the guys never leave. They just get there and they're like, you know what? This is for me. I'm just going to be a lifer. The NBA has no meaning. Because if you're a young guy, I'm like, look at these guys. Like, they never get drafted in the NBA. Like, they have like 1 or 2 guys. And it's like, all right, well, Michigan's constantly getting dudes drafted. I would think, like, if you're going to be an upcoming guy, you'd look at that and be like, hey, yeah, these guys are always getting drafted. Maybe I want to play there. But Hunter Dickinson coming back, Matt, NIL deals are the rumor. Because he didn't get – typically he would have been gone. There are rumors he was going to be gone last year because he was upset with NIL deals. But whenever you're, like, guaranteed, like, hey, you might be drafted in the second round – if teams can put together packages, like we threw out numbers last week about like some 3 stars are getting like $500,000. If you're a big time player, you're probably going to be closer to $1 million, and you're not going to make that if you don't make the roster in the NBA, right? I don't know what their guarantee is. I'm sure it's like the NFL, where if you're not a lottery pick, your money's not guaranteed, and so what's the point in leaving? You know.
Exactly.
So we'll see what happens because, like, Duke was built on the opposite of what UNC was doing. They were focused all on one and dones. But I'm going to find one and dones are pretty much going to be gone, I would think. And I wonder how many teams, because like a team of 5 freshmen, like we've seen at Kentucky, 5-star freshmen, all McDonald's All-Americans, they haven't won shit because they're all kids basically. And once you're playing against like Bruce Pearl's, wasn't he like at Auburn or something? Or Tennessee? I don't even know. No, Tennessee has Rick Barnes. The choke, I should know that because Michigan beat them this year. But when you have a guy like that has like whatever, the 5-year seniors, like how are these guys still playing? And it's like, oh wait, you guys are under sanctions. Yeah, that makes sense. Probably paying those guys. Even the field. Because like now UNC is going to be able to have that, and they've already recruited high. What's going to happen? What schools are going to step up? And I can't wait for it to come to football. Can't wait, Matt. Can't wait because you know those other schools that have been paying players, the ones that have been complaining the loudest, Matt, Alabama, Clemson. You don't think that they really like their old deal, where dudes just had cars on campus and no one asked questions? Because like I keep hearing about who else spoke out. Well, one of the old Alabama guys that was on sanctions for cheating, he said that the sport of football is now ruined because of the NIL deals. It's like, bro, you were on sanctions. What are you talking about? In the 90s. I think you got your national championship taken away, didn't they? But I know one of them was like around that. It was like around the Florida State years. I know it's probably too long for you to remember, though. Those good old days. But that's my thing. I want to see it evened out. I want to see it expanded playoff. It's my last topic of the show. I don't really have anything else. You have anything else for the show?
Yeah, it's more XFL related. It was kind of leaked that with the coaches that were going to be in place, that Gene Jones was going to be making not necessarily a return, but just he was going to be back coaching because Jim Haslett, shout out to my IUP man, that he's going to be coaching with supposedly Seattle in the XFL, and that June Jones was going to come in as his offensive coordinator. June Jones, before COVID hit, had the Houston Roughnecks undefeated, and were primed that they claimed the championship of the XFL the last time that the league played. So, it goes back to that whole thing that we're talking about, where you have these schemes. Like, a lot of people are saying the run and shoot's a dead offense and that it died in the 90s, but he's showing, went to Hawaii and was winning there, and took it to the XFL where they're considering that professional football, and they're able to have success at that level. And same thing, Bob Stoops is going to be coaching again with the XFL, and if he continues, he's always run the air raid offense. That if you're highlighting those styles, I mean, to me, that's more entertaining, knowing that you're still having people running these different styles of offense and being able to compare. Like in the previous XFL, they had Jim Zorn coach in Seattle, who was doing more of the traditional West Coast style offense. So you're having West Coast, you have run and shoot, you have air raid, you have these different styles that are different philosophies of football that can highlight the different aspects that to me makes it more enjoyable, because you're seeing different styles compared to just one carbon copy across the league.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that hire when we were talking about the XFL coaching moves, and I had talked about Stoops and stuff. The main thing is going to be, are you able to get those pioneers? The first XFL did a great job when it first came back. Like, it was 2 years ago now, 3 years. When was that COVID thing happened? They did a good job of bringing in big name guys and saying, like, hey, you're going to go crazy. The AAF tried to do that. Didn't they have my man Spurrier? But then they had him and like a bunch of nobodies, right?
Right.
And then he goes undefeated. And it's like, well, yeah, he's running like the fun offense. Everyone else is kind of just pretending to be the NFL light. Where the XFL, they went totally different. And so, like, I wouldn't even mind seeing an option offense in there. Because, like, you're only playing so many games. Could you imagine having to practice on that and giving, like, a Navy quarterback or an Army guy a run at it in the professional leagues? That'd be cool. I'd like to see that.
There would be a cluster of people who would lose their ever-lover mind to see some Paul Johnson style triple option. And Paul Johnson's retired right now, so they could bring him in. And
you'll see a guy like Sam Darnold get forced into running it because he'll be cut. And they'll want a big name guy, and he'll be making the wrong reads, pitching the ball right to the other team. And they'll be saying, "What are you doing?"
See, and that might be great TV then, because if you get a quarterback like that isn't as mobile in an option style offense, and he makes the wrong read, he's going to get tattooed on national TV.
Because, well, see, I joke about that, but like that's how I'm really worried about, like the XFL, where they're like, "Hey, we want to be a minor league system." How many times are they going to like give the same guys shots? Like how many? Like Sam Darnold's been floating around for a while. Same with like Trubisky now. Like if they both flame out again this year, like, and they end up at the XFL next year, I'm not going to tune in to watch that. Like, I've already seen enough. I'd rather them bring in new quarterbacks, but we'll see what happens, right? Because like in the past, they've only have done newer quarterbacks, the guys that haven't played. But the NFL minor league system kind of worries me the way they talked about it. But that might just be the Rock marketing it, trying to get people to put the connection in their brain to like, this is like the NFL, which would be a smart move by him. But we'll see, because what we should do, I'll probably forget about it. You can remind me, is look at the best players that kind of went undrafted, and we'll do our fake XFL picks after the draft. Like, which guys do you think should be a starter? Because I want to see if there's any big time quarterbacks, because this is a weaker quarterback draft. What big time starting quarterbacks would be available if the XFL only went with guys that weren't drafted? So we'll end on that, but we'll be back next week with stuff like that and taking a look on the best moves and if there were any big time trades. Hope Hutchinson goes number one, but if not, I hope he doesn't go number 2. So 1 or 3, baby. I don't want to see him with the Lions. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.